Today, we're going to make sourdough, but this isn't going to be like your fussy sourdough videos that you might have seen in the past. No, here at Nonsense Farm, we keep things simple, and if something works, we don't question it. You will not believe how simple this is. So, I started my sourdough journey, I don't know, probably a year ago. And of course I went through all these recipes and they've got stretch and folds and all these things you have to mess with, and I got varying results. And then I came across a thing that's referred to online as being an unloaf. And what this is you just mix the ingredients together, including unfed starter. So there's none of this like, oh, has my starter peaked? Oh, I gotta get up in the middle of the night and feed my starter the night before so that it'll be ready when I get up in the morning. None of that. Unfed starter, you mix your ingredients together, you leave it, then you shape it and you bake it, and that is it. So here we go. If you are gonna do sourdough though, you do need to invest in a kitchen scale. I will put this recipe in the description, but here is how it goes. You will not believe how simple this is. First thing is you do 165 grams of unfed starter. This is just discard that I've accumulated by feeding my starter, and then once it falls, I put it in the discard jar, put it in the refrigerator, and store it away. That's what we're using. Again, that's 165 grams. That is the one thing, the amount of unfed starter. That's the one thing that if there's a little bit extra in there, it's fine, it's fine. All right, next up is going to be the water. It's 400 grams of water. Now, it is important in sourdough that you use filtered water. This is the filtered water out of the door of my refrigerator. I am diligent about changing out the filters in the unit, so it is good filtered water. And if I had gotten it right out of the refrigerator just now, I would have heated it up just a little bit, because you don't want to put chilled water, because that just kind of stunts the action that you're wanting for it to raise your bread. So, filtered water, 400 grams. So we're gonna even out the scale, and we're gonna do 400 grams. You might be wondering why you wanna use filtered water for sourdough. Well, the reason is because most municipal water supplies use things like chlorine and chloramine to keep down the bacteria and whatnot in the water. Well, when you're growing sourdough, you're wanting all of those microorganisms to actually grow. That's what you're wanting. So you don't want things in the water that are gonna stifle that happening. So that's why you wanna use filtered water. Now we are going to mix up this starter and water so that it just is like watered down starter. Great. And now we're gonna add our flour. 650 grams of bread flour. Now let's talk about flour for a minute. I have landed on the Kirkland's organic all-purpose flour that you get at Costco. I don't know if you can hear my dogs barking, but there's a lot of people getting roofs replaced in this neighborhood, and so the dogs are going bizarre. I don't know if you hear it, but anyway. So I use this Costco flour. I get great results with it, and I like it. I've also tried the King Arthur organic flour. I do feel strongly about organic flour because that way I know that it is not bromated. If you don't know what I mean by bromated flour, Google it and educate yourself. But a lot of times people think they have a problem with gluten. It's actually that they have a problem with bromate. If you've ever had the phenomenon of you can't eat bread here without blowing up like a balloon, but you go to Europe and you can eat all the bread you want, that's why, probably. Your mileage may vary, consult your own physician. Anyway, so now we have the starter, the water, and the flour, and we're gonna mix it up just with our clean hand. Could not be easier. We're not creating any dishes. You might be questioning my choice of mixing vessel here. I'm doing it right in this container because this is the container I'm going to use. I'll put this lid on it and it will rise in this container until it is double in size. Why dirty up another dish? Are you starting to get a pattern here? We do things here that are easy. All right, the last ingredient is 15 grams of salt. I prefer Redmond's real salt. It is mined right here in the United States. It's actual just salt. They pull it out of the earth and here it is. So do your own due diligence and see what you like. But that's what I like. So 15 grams of salt. Now, if I were being careful, I would measure out the 15 grams into a separate little bowl and then add it to my dough, because for instance, when I measured out the flour and I had a few extra grams, it was real easy to grab a little bit out. But with this salt, there's so little of it that it's hard to pull any of it back out if I put too much in. But we're living dangerously. 15, woohoo, there we go. All right, now we're going to thoroughly mix that in. I like this container for letting the dough rise for a couple reasons. One, it has a good fitting lid, so the top of the dough doesn't dry out when it's sitting around. The other thing is it has these measurements on the side already, so it's very easy to objectively know when your dough has doubled. And that's what you're waiting on. All right. I think we're pretty incorporated in there. All right, so we're gonna put the lid on and we're gonna wait until the dough has doubled. It could be anywhere from 3 to 12 hours. It just depends on how warm your house is. We're not gonna sit around and just look at this at Nonsense Farm. We're always busy. So I'm gonna leave this here. I'm gonna go out to the farm and get some things done and we will check back later.
But before I go, I need to clean up. I have dough all over my hands. And I want to give you a pro tip. You want to minimize or completely avoid putting sourdough starter or bread dough down your sink, because it eventually will become a problem in your plumbing. Ask any plumber, they'll tell you. So what I do is, for things like washing my hands, I have this drain guard and I'll wash my hands. Any of the dough is caught here and then I put it in the trash.
All right, I'm getting home from the farm. Let's see what our sourdough is doing. All right, it is up to the 2-liter mark, so let's get cleaned up and we'll shape this loaf.
You're going to start sprinkling flour on the counter. Then get our dough out. Right. One handy doodad when you start your sourdough journey is a dough scraper. Sometimes called a bench scraper. You can use this to get most of the dough off the sides of the container. And that's great. And just mean getting it to where it's not stickiness on the outside. All right, now, this is kind of like the action of kneading if you've ever made regular yeast dough before. I'm just making it into a lump of dough here, I guess. All right, so there's that. And now we're going to leave it covered on the counter for 1 hour, and I will set a timer.
All right, now let's talk about baking. You're gonna bake your loaf in an enclosed dish like this. You can either use a cast iron Dutch oven, or this is actually called a bread oven. I'm gonna put a link to this and all my favorite sourdough doodads down in the description so you can take a look at it and see if you want to buy it. But you want it to be enclosed because it keeps the humidity and it makes the dough rise better, makes your loaf rise. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take either parchment paper, or they make these really cool silicone bread slings, and you're gonna put your formed loaf on there, lift it into here, cover it up, and put it in a cold oven. You put it in the oven and you set it for 450, and you set your timer for an hour. And you let the oven heat up inside this for 1 hour. And then after the end of that hour, you take the lid off and you see how beautifully your loaf has raised. And even if it didn't, that's all right. Mistakes are not fatal. And you set it down to 350 and let it bake uncovered for about 15 more minutes so that it gets beautiful and brown. Then finally, the moment has come. You've waited that whole hour, you took the lid off, you waited 15 more minutes, and finally your sourdough is a beautiful, beautiful, nice, warm loaf. And so what you want to do is immediately cut into it and eat it, right? Wrong. You need to let it cool, optimally about 4 hours. If you don't, then when you cut into it, it's gonna compress the loaf and it's gonna be gummy on the inside. You really, really need to let it cool. Finally, after it's cooled, here you go, and you're ready to cut in. Let's take a look. Beautiful, right? Cheers.